start the live stream again, and please let me know now if you see me. As I told you, it's my first live stream. I mean, the first live stream I start by myself, so I'm a little bit nervous about some technical stuff, because usually when I do live streams for VOA, for Voice of America, I am being guided by my colleagues, by different people who are our producers and editors, and they help me with technical stuff. So please let me know if you are here and you see me. Okay, I guess just the viewers left because they saw that the previous live stream was frozen, and they left. I'm sorry about that, guys. So I just start. I'll start all over again. I have to start again, but now I know what to say. I'll try to repeat. As I told you already, I'm going to tell you first a little bit about myself, and then I will talk a little bit about propaganda itself, Russian propaganda, and how it works during this war. As I told you before, it's a huge topic and it's hard to cover it in one live stream. So I will just give you some points, and mostly I wanted to create that stream to get to know you, and you get to know me, to tell you more about my career and what I was doing as a journalist, as a linguist, and as I said already, a little bit about main propaganda tools. But my biography is important propaganda-wise because you will understand what happened to a lot of, almost all of them, Russian media. So I'm Ksenia Turkova. I'm a journalist, and I've been working as a journalist for more than 20 years already. And I started in Moscow. I lived in Moscow until I moved to Kiev 10 years ago. So I lived near Moscow, in Moscow region. I was born in Moscow region in a little town. Then I moved to Moscow. And I worked for several TV channels and several radio stations, and I mostly worked for non-government, private TV channels and private radio stations, because it was always my position not to work for government. Work for government. So my first job was NTV channel, and as I understood from your comments before, some of you know that channel, and you mentioned already that that was a good channel, and you're right. So I will tell you a little bit more again, one more time about that. So in 90s, I started working for NTV in 2000, in the year 2000. So when Putin became a president, and from the middle 90s till early 2000s, that channel was the symbol of highest standards, professional standards of journalism. And every journalist was dreaming about working for that channel. Literally. And I was dreaming as well. I was very young. I was 20 years old. And I got to this channel as an intern. There was a huge internship, 50 people from the university, Moscow University. I forgot to mention, tell you again that I graduated Moscow University. So 50 people from Moscow University. And then they kept, we went through that internship, like 2 or 3 months. And after that, they kept only 5 people. And I was among them. So I got a job at NTV. And at first I couldn't believe it happened, because it was the channel of my dreams, of everybody's dreams. And I saw in the hallways, I saw all those famous people, famous TV hosts, news presenters. And I couldn't believe it was happening with me, 20-year-old girl. And I was so happy. But then very soon, because already in 2000, 2001, it was already clear what Putin was, because already Kursk submarine happened, and in 2001 that channel, TV NTV channel, was overtaken by the state oil company Gazprom, and it was done, with such a cruelty. So those people just got to the channel in the middle of the night and just took it over. They changed the tablets on the doors, and it was the story before that. It was not, it didn't happen overnight, but I'm not going to tell you all the story because it's a big story, and I need to dedicate the separate live stream. But what we have the situation when that best TV Russian TV channel, private channel, was overtaken by the state company. That's what happened, uh, because Putin wanted to control that channel. He didn't like the content. He didn't like that channel was criticizing him a lot, and so he wanted to control it. He wanted to control big, popular media, influential media. And so after that, it was very tragic for me as for a young person, because I was again 20 years old. I just started my career. I just started my job at that channel of my dreams, and I felt like my wings were cut, and I was so wounded by that situation, and my young colleagues as well. And I think it was tragic for all people who worked for NTV, but it was mostly tragic for young people. And even now, when I watch documentaries about NTV, like 20 years, more than 20 years passed, and still, if we watch me and my colleagues documentaries about NTV, we cry. We would like call each other and, did you see that? Did you see that? And we would cry because it still hurts. And so the majority of team of the channel left it, and we created a new channel. It was channel TV 6, and it was cut off air as well in half a year. So it was shut down basically by the government because of censorship reasons. But then we created another channel, and you see this on my shelf. This is for the microphone, and I still keep it. It's for my memories. That was the third channel we created, but it was also shut down. It was also cut off air, and it was also a tragic story. And I brought this from Moscow to Kiev, and then from Kiev to Washington D.C. as a memory. So after that, I worked for several TV channels and radio stations. As I told you before, I didn't want to work for any government-related media. So I worked for Echo of Moscow. It's I would say it was the most famous and popular news and talk radio station in Russia. After it was founded in 1991. So after the Soviet Union collapsed, and it was a legendary radio station. I say was because it was also shut down recently, so it doesn't exist anymore. And on the frequency of Echo of Moscow, there is one of the government radio stations, so propaganda actually. So they replaced that radio station with pure propaganda. And after that, I worked at Echo Moskvy, Echo of Moscow. I worked for REN TV channel. Also, it used to be a private channel. Then it was bought by the structure related to Putin. And I worked for several other radio stations. And when I worked for one of them, my former boss called me and asked me if I was willing to move to Kiev. It was 10 years ago. And I decided to move to Kiev. I wanted to try something new, to move to create a new radio station, Russian speaking radio station at that time. So mostly Russian speaking with Ukrainian, of course. So I moved there as a host, as a future host, and also as a trainer, because I am a certified media trainer. And I usually teach journalists how to write news texts, because I'm specializing in news texts, and my dissertation was about that as well. And so I moved there, and I was so interested in that. It was so exciting. And after that, I moved, and in several months, the Revolution of Dignity started. And the Revolution of Dignity, then the annexation of Crimea, then war in Donbass. And my son and I was a single mom, so I moved with my son to Kiev. We lived right at the in the center of the city, on that Maidan Square. I know that you asked me to tell you more about Maidan word, and it's on my list. I didn't forget about that, and I will record a video about that for sure. But just you have to wait because I'm very busy with that war. I'm very busy with my main job. So we lived literally in the center of city, right on that square, Maidan Square. So it was all in front of my eyes. And I went on air every day for 3-4 hours. 3-4 hours. I went on air. I talked to people. I talked to people from nonstop, from everywhere, from different regions of Ukraine, from people from Crimea, military people from Crimea when it was all happening, defenders of Donetsk airport. And so it just went through. I went through all this with this country, and I got very bonded very much bonded with Ukraine. And that's why I feel so like responsible for what is going on. I feel my part of responsibility for that, and I want to help because it's a special country for me. And so although I lived there only about 5 years, but then I got a job offer and I moved to DC to work for Voice of America. It was a very hard decision. I got a job offer very coincidentally, and I didn't know what to do. So I was thinking a lot all for almost a year, because I loved Ukraine, I loved Kiev, and I still love Ukraine. And I loved my job. I was a radio host and then TV host and then executive producer on one of TV channels. I had a lot of interesting projects. I traveled around post-Soviet countries, and I had a very interesting project, language related, about national languages. And so I loved everything I did, and I loved where I lived, and I didn't want to move. But then I decided to try something new, and that's how I happened to be here in DC. And now I think it's very important to talk about what is going on. As you see, that propaganda machine we have now was not built overnight. It was a gradual process, and it became really a fuel of invasion. It was creating all those years an image of Ukraine as a failed state, an image of Ukrainian language as a language that doesn't exist, and there was a lot of hate on Russian TV channels against Ukraine and against United States, against Western countries in general. And if you watched TV channels all those 8 years since the annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass started, you would see you wouldn't see, I would say, news about Russia. You would see only news about Ukraine, about United States, about different European countries, and how bad the life is everywhere except Russia. I'm not exaggerating, because in every TV show, in every evening show, they discuss. Now it's obvious because there is a war, but before the war, They every day they would discuss Ukraine as an enemy. They would discuss United States. They would discuss other they would discuss European countries, and everybody is bad except Russia, and everybody has a lot of problems except Russia. That was the main message, and it's still the main message. It was the main message of all those years, and they yell a lot on those talk shows. It's impossible to. Sometimes I see something and I hear something and I can't believe it. It's real. I will give you some examples a little bit later. So before I start talking about propaganda itself, I will tell you one story about Ukraine and about Russia. It's my personal story. So when I lived in Ukraine, I was visiting Russia a lot because I was visiting my relatives, my friends. And unfortunately, I lost a lot of friends because of my political beliefs and because of situation after the Revolution of Dignity, after the Crimea. So it's not right now. It happened several years ago. So I was visiting my relatives and my friends in Russia. And once I went to Moscow and I had a very late flight. And I was so tired. I took a taxi from the airport to go to my sister's place. And I had a tablet with me. And since it has a black cover, I didn't realize that I put it on the seat and then I left it. I just didn't notice it. It was like 2 a.m. And I was very tired. So I realized that I left my tablet in the car only next morning. And I decided to block it. So I go to iCloud, find my iPad, iPhone, how you do that. So I blocked it and I wrote a message. Hi, my name is Ksenia. My phone is this and that. And please call me if you find my iPad. But then I tracked it and I saw it was already in Bryanskaya Oblast, so far away, like hundreds kilometers from Moscow. And I understood it was stolen and maybe I would never see it again. I was a little bit upset because I had a lot of pictures in it and I didn't have any backup for some reason. I don't remember. So I really needed this tablet. But I understood that probably it's stolen and I would never see it again. And then I completely forgot about that and I got back to Kiev and I was putting my son to bed and then I got a call from some Russian number. I know Russian number. And I pick up and the man's voice said, are you Ksenia? I said, yes. And he said, I found your tablet. My name is Andrew. I'm from Bryanskaya Oblast, and I bought your tablet from someone. I just wanted to buy something for my kids, and I didn't have enough money, so I bought an old tablet from someone, but I didn't know it was stolen. And now I feel so bad, and I want to give it back to you. He was saying that, assuming that I'm in Moscow or I am in some other Russian region. And he said, I feel so bad. I didn't want to steal. I was a little bit tipsy and I wanted to buy something for my kids. And so I bought this tablet. How I can give it back to you? And I said, well, I don't know because I'm in Kiev, in Ukraine. And there was a pause. And then he said, in Ukraine, in Kiev. And I said, yes. And he said, but how can you survive there, poor girl? And at first I didn't even understand his question. And he was dead serious. So he was a typical like textbook viewer of Russian state TV channels. And since every day they tell people that it's very dangerous in Kiev, they can kill you for speaking Russian, and there is no no heat, no hot water, and people live just in a disaster, and metro doesn't work. So he believed in all that, and he was like, but how can you survive there? You should go back. You should go back to Russia. But then we figured out how he could give this tablet back to me. And so he was a nice guy, but poisoned by propaganda. That was a good example to what extent it could work. I've watched them with my family. They're insane. Which channel do you mean, Greg? Tell me, please. Yes, sometimes you watch them and it's, I don't know even how to comment. So let me tell you a little bit about propaganda now and how it works. So last week, as you know, a car explosion in Moscow killed Daria Dugina, daughter of famous Russian nationalist, philosopher, propagandist Alexander Dugin, known as Putin's brain. Dugina actually shared the same views with her father, although there are a lot of people who didn't know her. They thought it was just a daughter of some. Yes, they knew him, but they didn't know about her. But she shared exactly the same views with him. She was a regular guest at Russian TV shows, making hateful statements about Ukraine and Western countries. For example, after the whole world knew about the atrocities in Bucha, now listen to that. Dugina said that Bucha sounded almost like the English word butcher. So, according to her, it meant that the West, the USA in particular, was behind the events in Bucha. And all those events was staged by Western countries, I guess by Washington, because butcher is an English word, staged, everything was staged to make people hate Russian army. That's what she said. It's one of her statements. So actually, she put a lot of effort um, to make people hate Ukraine and hate Ukrainians. Actually, blaming Ukraine for creating fake news is one of the main tactics of Russian propaganda, and I told you about that on my channel. So, according to Russian propaganda, almost all attacks on civil objects in Ukraine were staged. So Mariupol bombing was staged. You remember that maternal hospital and those horrible pictures with pregnant women. And they on Russian TV, in Russian social media, in publics, in different publics, they told people, they were telling people that it was all staged, it was fake. And one of the pregnant women, there were two women filmed by photographers, I think Associated Press photographer. One of those women unfortunately died, and another woman survived. But in Russia, they told people that she was an actress, not an actress, like a beauty blogger, and that's why it was all staged, because she's a beauty blogger and she can make a makeup. So can you imagine? She was standing like literally in the ruins of that maternity hospital. So I don't know. Maybe they think Steven Spielberg came to Mariupol to stage all that, because otherwise I can't imagine how a beauty blogger could have staged it. But that's what they told people, and people believed in that. And even educated people believed in that. I saw it in the comments of my followers, or they're not my followers anymore after that. So since the war started, actually more than 150 journalists left Ukraine. I think it's more already, because the number was from the March. So they could not continue working, because according to the new law, they are facing 15 years in prison for just saying the word war instead of special operation. And some of them were arrested, some of them were fined for the discredit of the Russian army for creating fakes, persecuted, threatened. So independent media, as Echo of Moscow and TV channel Rain, were cut off air, and all the journalists had to move to other countries. Uh, yes. What I wanted to tell you about propaganda and which tools they used. First of all, I wanted to tell you that they used the same narratives throughout the years against Ukraine and Ukrainians. They added some new ones, but they had like the main narratives they used over and over, and that's why it's like stuck in people's heads. So first of all, in 2004, when the revolution, the Orange Revolution, so-called Orange Revolution in Ukraine happened, there was also a lot of propaganda on Russian TV. They said that revolution was backed or even initiated by US and Western countries. The activists were bribed, the activists were drugged, and you know that now Russian propaganda is saying that Zelensky is always on drugs, and they send him drugs right from Washington D.C. That's what I heard on one of state TV channels. I'm not exaggerating. They said, and as you know, they send Zelensky drugs from Washington, straight from Washington D.C. And that's one of the main narratives in on Russian TV now, and they used it back at that time in 2004. They said, so the oranges, I mean fruit, became a symbol of that revolution, and they were telling people that they put drugs in it, those oranges, that they made some injections or something like that. So that and also that people who were on the streets, they were bribed and possibly drugged. Then the revolution of dignity happened in 2013, 2014. Again, we see the same narratives. The revolution was backed or even initiated by US and Western countries. The activists were bribed, the activists were drugged. They said that on Maidan you can see like only drunk or drugged people, homeless people, and it's not like a creative class, what they call. But they added some new narratives to that. They started saying that Ukrainians are bombing themselves in Donbass. And we see now they use it narrative again during this war very actively. The Ukrainian president is a failure. They used it against Poroshenko. They talked a lot about Poroshenko on TV, and sometimes, Russian propaganda, especially TV propaganda, they like discussing some physical abilities or physical appearance of people they don't like. For example, one of the main narratives in Russian on Russian TV channels about Biden is that Biden is very old. He doesn't understand what he's talking about, and it's not like the expert is saying that. It's a journalist or the TV or a TV host, and they would make fun of it. They would say, like, oh, Biden is going to Middle East. It might be dangerous for him because it's very hot there, a lot of sun, and for him he's so old, and it will be bad for his head, which is already bad. They make comments like that, like during news. I heard it in one of the news reports. It was not even a TV show when you invite some guests and they can say whatever. It's a journalist who is saying that. And so the same way they were making fun of Poroshenko, like for example, once they noticed that his sock had a hole, and they dedicated the whole the whole, like several minutes, the whole segment of the reportage to that hole in Poroshenko's sock. So they do things like that. And also one more narrative: Ukraine can't survive without Russia, and the implied brotherly nation concept. Brotherly nation concept, it refers to Soviet years when Stalin was the father of nations, and the nations were like brothers and one family. And Russia wants to keep this concept very much, and Russia use it over and over again, that brotherly nation concept. which is rejected over and over by Ukraine, because they say we're not brothers, especially after what you've done with us. And we're a different nation, we're a different country, we have different language and stuff like that. But in 2022, when the war started, so before we dealt with some kind of twisted reality, with very biased news, with censored news, and so on. But in 2022, the propaganda reached some other level. And now I would say it's not like a twisted reality anymore. It's absolutely different reality. It's like I like this comparison. It's like in a TV show, Stranger Things. You have upside down. It's completely upside down. So if, let's say, some person slept for several years and woke up in 2022, and let's say that person lives in Russia, and they woke up in Russia and they watch Russian TV, and they would have completely different picture from what we have and from what the whole world has. Of course, different countries, they have different approaches, they have different media controlled by different people, and some of those media are biased, and that's the reality, and we all understand that. But in Russia, we have just different reality, completely different. It's upside down. And so that's what they are doing during the war. They blocked all independent media. They now have new laws. According to those laws, you can get to jail just because of using the word war. So every single media in Russia has to say special operation and has to use those special terms that are actually not correct terms, and they describe the situation in a completely different and wrong way. And now during this war, Russian propaganda uses three main tools. First, first tool is euphemization, or covering bad things with good names. So they ban the word war. They say special operation. They don't say invading. They say liberation. And in Ukraine, people are making jokes. They still are making jokes. They are able to make jokes, and I admire them for that. They have such a good sense of humor and bravery. So they're making jokes about that word. They say, like those, bitter jokes. They say they liberated us from our houses, from our relatives, because some of them were killed, from our land, and sometimes from our lives. So that's how they liberated us. Or helping the brother nation, of course, they use this term. So all kind of terms that cover the real situation. They use different, completely different nominations for that, different terminology, and they use it in different in other areas as well. They used it during pandemic because they didn't recommend the media to use the word lockdown, for example. Media didn't use this word because they didn't want to frighten people. Situation in Russia was really bad, and they were trying to hide numbers. Some independent journalists, they figured out the real numbers. They was very, very high, much higher than the government was saying, and they were trying to hide that from people, and that's why they didn't want to use that word lockdown. Also, about Navalny. I made a video about that, how the Russian officials are avoiding the name of Navalny, and they use different other names. You can find this video on my YouTube channel. They use it all the time. And when there was financial crisis of 2008, 2009, I was a TV host on one TV channel, and on one of the TV channels, and I know that journalists were told not to use the word financial crisis in Russia. So that's expression, that phrase, financial crisis in Russia. Why? Because they wanted to show the audience that the crisis in the Western countries and in Russia, everything is okay. And so journalists were allowed to say, like, financial problems. There are certain financial problems in Russia, but they didn't use the word crisis. That's also euphemization. I have a lot of examples like this. And Yes, so one of the examples, by the way, you know what is going on in Crimea now, because Ukrainian military forces, they are trying to hit certain objects in Crimea, and in Crimea, Crimea's officials, they didn't want to admit that Ukrainians are doing that, that they are attacked. So they use words like clap. They say like some they use some loud sounds were heard in Crimea. So they use all kinds of euphemisms. And again, I will dedicate one video about that because there is one very interesting and funny meme about that. But I won't tell you everything right now. I will dedicate a special video for that. So the second tool is mirroring. They accuse other countries in what they accuse Russia. So they use exactly the same terms. For example, if Russia is compared, or there is a discussion about Russia as a terrorist state, they immediately say something about that, but about Ukraine. For example, after the explosion, after the explosion of Dugina's car, I watched on purpose. I watched for the research reasons. I watched main TV channels in Russia, some reports, and the host said, "Now we understand again. One more time, we understood that Ukraine is a terroristic state." So they use exactly the same term. The whole world is about to use about Russia, but they mirroring it. And also they use a lot of hate speech. As I told you before, it's impossible to watch that, and it's painful to watch that. What they say, they compare. They, for example, can compare Ukrainian people to worms. And also, you can find this extract on YouTube. It's subtitled in English. One of the main propagandists in Russia, Vladimir Solovyov, in his talk show, very popular, he is always yelling there, and he's full of hate and towards everybody except Russia. Everyone except Russia. And so he said that that special operation in Russia, it's like to get worms out of cat's body, because for the worms it's war, and for the cat is its liberation. So he basically compared Ukrainians to worms, and it's only one example. They do it every day. It's a total dehumanization, and it's, as I said, painful to see that. So I will go to your questions. I have a lot of quotes, a lot of different expressions they use, and I'm actually thinking about doing some war anti-language, I call it like this, vocabulary for VOA, but in Russian language. So I can talk over and over about that, and I know a lot about propaganda, and I research it, and I think it's very important to research it now and to document everything. It's very important for the future to know how it works. And now let me read some of your comments. Thank you for your comments. You write a lot, actually. Hello, everyone from Louisiana. Thank you. Hi. I've never been to Louisiana, by the way. Orcs are orcs. That's one of the messages. I recently made a video about orcs. And yes, it's the phenomenon of that word, by the way, that it became neutral. So it's a very loaded word, as you can guess, but in Ukrainian context, it became neutral. So they use it just in the official statements and news, and it's an interesting word. Brotherly nation concept, while also demonizing everyone that isn't them. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Thank you for your work you're doing for educators. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for watching me. Thanks God my family left to the US before I got here. Your background is very similar to my mom's, which is crazy. Thank you for what you do to spread the truth. That's from Greg. The Russian talk shows about fashion and especially surreal. Everything seems to be bread and circus and propaganda. Yes, I read that message already. With what happened in the Russian with the media, will it affect the ability of staff to get other jobs and work overseas? That's a very good question. Actually, it happened already. A lot of journalists they work successfully from overseas or from Europe. A lot of them moved to some close countries like Lithuania. There is a big like journalistic hub in Lithuania, and in Czech Republic, in Prague, in France. A lot of Russian journalists are spread now in European countries, and some of them are in the United States. And now, after pandemic, we understand that we can work remotely and we understand how it works, and it gave us a lot of flexibility and actually a lot of media work like that. Also Belarusian media work like that, because the situation in Belarus is the same and even worse. A lot of Belarusian journalists they got real uh, they are in prison now, and their colleagues they made it out of Belarus and they're working from different countries remotely. And I talked to a lot of them. I talked to Belarusian journalists and Russian journalists, and they all say the same thing. Now you can be a journalist, a Belarusian or Russian journalist, only out of your country, being out of your country. That's the reality we have. Because if they stay in their countries, they can't be journalists anymore. So it's good for them to move, to continue working and continue their mission as journalists. And actually, I'm planning an interview with one of the journalists who left Russia. About Ukraine. Do a lot of young Russians support Putin? I don't remember the statistics right now, what the polls say, but I do know that among young audience, Putin has much less support than among older audience. And young people do not, in the majority of young people, do not support Putin. I mean, very young people, like 20 years old and maybe 25 and younger, and high schoolers especially. And that's why they like Navalny, and they went on the streets to support Navalny when Navalny was free several years ago. And that's why I think actually Putin got scared, because he saw the support from the young people. And in my opinion, it's because of the language again. I always pay attention to language, because Navalny knows how to talk to young audience. He uses the same language. He's a modern person. He knows how to use internet. He's a popular blogger. Putin doesn't know how to use internet, and it's well known. So Putin is stuck in the past, and he doesn't know this new language. And Navalny is very good at it. That's why he's in prison, actually. May I ask where you're living now? I live in Washington, D.C. I think I mentioned that in the beginning of my live stream. Are you in Ukraine or some other place? No, I'm not in Ukraine anymore, but I want to go to Ukraine very much. He also has a villa in Italy. You're talking about, then you're talking about Vladimir Solovyov, I guess. The one of the main propagandists in Russia. He has a villa in Italy, as well as citizenship. He was called out on his many times. Yeah, that's true. On this many times. Is there any information about any resistance movement in Russia, or have too many people left Russia to support any resistance to Putin? Thank you for the question. There is a resistance in Russia, and I tell you about that a lot on my channel. And it's actually hidden resistance. So now in Russia, they have a silent protest, a hidden resistance with different forms of that resistance. So sometimes it's like putting a ribbon, yellow, blue ribbon on your cat. Or on your dog, and it's already resistance. It sounds funny, but for some people, it's the only way to show their position. I mean, except helping. A lot of people help Ukrainians. For example, in St. Petersburg, there is a group of volunteers. They don't want to be public, so they don't give interviews, but people know they exist, and they help people. So some people from Mariupol, for example, they are forced to go to Russia, and those people from St. Petersburg, they help those people who are forced to go to Russia to leave Russia. So they guide them, and they help them to go, for example, to Estonia from St. Petersburg, because it's very close. And I did an interview with one of those families from Mariupol. They gave me a big interview in Russian, unfortunately, so I can't share. But I guess it was, maybe it was translated. I need to check. So yes, there are people like that who help a lot, but there is no mass resistance, and I think we can't accept it, expect it. I'm sorry, we can't expect it in the next future. Привет from England. Hope you're well, and thank you for what you do. I am pro Ukraine, says. But not in Thai Russian. Would love to visit one day. I'm also not anti-Russian because I'm Russian. I'm anti-Putin, but I'm not anti-Russian because I teach Russian language, and I teach Russian language, Russian literature. I'm a Russian linguist, and of course I love Russia, like, because my motherland. I love my relatives, some of my friends who still live there, but I don't like the Russia, I would say, as a state, as a system of political ideas and views. I don't like that Russia. Yes, we need to realize not all Russians support the war. Of course, not all Russian support the war. My notification says you're live, but when click this, it takes me to an uploaded video. Maybe it was an old video, and because I started live and then it was frozen and I started it again. Good to know that the younger generations are, for the most part, not being fooled by the propaganda. Some of them are, unfortunately, and I don't know how it happens. It's still a question for me. I'm wondering how it happens with the young generation, because sometimes you can hear from young people that they would like to have Stalin as a leader, and I don't understand how a young person can say that. Because they never lived in that era. Why are they missing Stalin? It's so weird. But a lot of young people, as I already said, they don't watch TV. They watch TikTok. And by the way, during the last mass protests to support Navalny, TikTok was used a lot to gather people. And so they watch TikTok, they watch social media, they are active on internet, and yes, it's more difficult to fool them with propaganda. Yes, him. It's about Vladimir Solovyov. So I actually I want to end my stream now. If you have any other questions, I will wait maybe for 1 or 2 minutes for the last one, and I will answer these questions. And please let me know if you need if you. If you like live streams like that, and if you will be willing to watch it in a weekly mode, for example. So let me know, and because I have a lot of topics to talk about. Uh, Thank you. You're a great person. Thank you so much. Uh, Thank you for the live streaming. I heard that some media pronounce Club for Explosion as cotton. Yes, that's what. Don't tell everybody about that, because I'm going to record a video about that and explain this. This is a very, very interesting meme. Stephen. Uh, I mean that surely most Russians understand this is war, but afraid to speak out. You're right. Maybe most, not most Russian, but a lot of them. Be well and stay well. Спасибо. Thank you so much for watching me. It was fun. It was my first live stream on this channel, as I told you before. And thank you so much for your comments. You posted very interesting questions, and it was a pleasure to talk for you and to talk to you. Thank you so much. Bye.